Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Goodnight, Elmer, released in 1940. It's the 304th in the series and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Collector's Vault Volume 1 Blu-ray set, and I have a link below to that set. It's actually not out at the time of this recording, but it'll be out soon, and no doubt this review will be up to date once the set actually comes out. And definitely pick that up because we want more volumes and more Looney Tunes released on physical media. You won't find this on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it on their own channel, as it is a copyrighted short. And it's pretty safe. It's not particularly funny, but they might put it on as a bit of a curiosity. So what happens in this one, in case you haven't seen it? Honestly, this is Elmer getting ready to go to bed, but he's constantly interrupted by a candle refusing to go out. And that's it. There's really not much to this one. I know a few of you who have been longtime fans of the channel, you've been itching for me to revisit this one because of the nature of this short, in that it is perhaps one of the most unfunniest, slowest Looney Tunes shorts ever made, at least at this period of time, and especially when compared to what the other directors were doing. But there are definitely merits to this one, and we'll definitely go through it. So a few bits of trivia. So the usual voice of Elmer Fudd, Arthur Q. Bryan, he actually did not voice Elmer in this. I mean, it's a silent short, it's all pantomime, except for the crying at the end, which according to Keith Scott and his Cartoon Voices book, Mel Blanc does those sound effects. So chances are they were recording something else, and while Mel was in the recording booth, they just said, hey, can you just do some crying, and that's it. It's possible it may have been taken from another short entirely. I don't have that information on hand. Either way, it was Mel Blanc. But speaking of taking from another short, if you watch the end of the 1935 short, The Merry Old Soul, you can see the king doing that really weird crying face at the end. Elmer does something similar here, so maybe the same animator worked on both scenes, or I'm not really sure. Or it could be just one of those odd coincidences. I don't know. So the theme of this short is one that was done by a fair few studios, either before or after this short was released, and it's just a simple idea. Character needs to go to sleep, but character is interrupted by pesky noises lurking around, like a tap dripping or something ticking away like a clock or whatever. So you've got MGM having a Barney Bear short called The Bear That Couldn't Sleep. After this short was released, you've got one of my favorites, Early to Bed, which is a 1941 Donald Duck short. But I'm sure there's others. I know there's similar ones where Popeye's trying to get to sleep and he just has all these weird dreams. But if you know of any others, definitely let me know in the comments. But it's a pretty standard cartoon type trope, and it wouldn't surprise me if certain animation TV shows later on would have similar ideas here. And it's not a bad one, it's just how it's executed. And some would say, yeah, this one's not particularly funny. But I guess if you watch this one with the mindset that it's not funny, but it's more of an animation study, you can at least see some good in it, even if you're not necessarily entertained like you would in a later Chuck Jones short. But one thing you can't deny, this restoration is stunning, especially with all the play on light throughout all the scenes, where you've got this candle flickering in some scenes and you can see the light reflected onto Elmer as he's trying to put the candle out, and various other scenes within. So I think we can all be in agreement that at least this short looks good. Sadly, the short is painfully slow, but I really think that this was just an excuse for Jones to do a bit of a character study, to practice some more pantomime, and play a bit with light. But I can imagine someone like Leon Schlesinger, who produced these shorts and is a bit of a penny pincher, wouldn't be too happy about it because, you know, he needs to make money. He needs to have shorts made that would entertain the audiences and there'll be a high demand for him. Whereas I can't really imagine audiences responding too well to something like this. But who knows? I certainly wasn't there in the audience at the time, so we just have to guess what the audience reaction would have been. But let's take a look at this short, and honestly, there's probably not really too much to say about this one, but I'll let you know my observations within. But you will notice with the design of Elmer here, it's a similar design to what Elmer would end up actually being all throughout the Golden Age of Looney Tunes, with one exception. You have the so-called Fat Elmer that would come into play very soon, and that will be for 5 shorts before it reverts back to this character design. So Elmer is more or less finalized here. He doesn't have the red nose like in the Wild Hare. So after the Fat Elmer design was retired for whatever reason, they've just gone back to this one because it works perfectly well. So the short starts off simple enough. Elmer's reading a book by candlelight. And side note, I don't know how people were able to read by candlelight back then with the light being so small. It's hard for someone like myself to make out the words. But anyway, that's beside the point. But you can see here Jones is already thinking about the layout here. So you see Elmer reading the book. We pan over to the clock. It's past 11 o'clock. So I guess that book must be really riveting, especially since there's no title on it. But anyway, and we hear Elmer's yawn. Again, that would be Mel Blanc. And we can see through pantomime that, yeah, it's time for bed. What else is there to say? Now you'll notice that there's a shot of Elmo walking through the hallway and entering his bedroom. This is the sort of thing that Jones would do away with later on because really, do you need to see that shot? Think about it. If you deleted the shot of that hallway and you just have him yawning, looking up, oh yeah, it's time for bed, and then you just have him with the candle walking through the door, it says the same thing. So, to me, this is just a learning experience for Chuck anyway. So now we see Elmer getting ready for bed, but again, just put aside the fact it's not funny, and I'm probably going to mention it a few times anyway, but just pay attention to the actual technical merits of this one and have a look at how the light from the candle is lighting up Elmer's face, has got the dual tone color. And again, I would imagine someone like Leon Schlesinger, a penny pincher, wouldn't be exactly happy with the extra expense involved with having to do the extra coloring on something like this. But in any case, we see now Elmer, as I said, getting ready for bed. So I see a bit, and this would clearly be inspired by the silent comedians at the time, and Jones definitely had an affinity for the silent era comedians, so this would have been some sort of a trope where you would have seen in some silent movie, you have a character trying to take off their jacket or whatever, but they can't put the item down. The problem with this scene is that the timing is definitely on the slower side here. Again, it is what it is. But he ends up putting the candle on the windowsill, so there's no real major payoff. Jones would, later on, when doing this type of gag, would end up doing something a lot more funnier than this, but he puts it on the windowsill, and we hear that the wind is blowing. And again, we get a play on light, so the candle gets blown out, and I suppose that's a bit of foreshadowing because later on, when Elmer wants the candle to go out, it actually won't. But when he wants the candle on, well, how easy is the candle to blow out? So I guess that's part of the gag. But we see Elmer lighting up the candle again, and then tries to take off his jacket again while holding onto the hat, doing the same sort of routine as before while balancing it on his head. Yeah, it's riveting, isn't it? But I do like the bit when he puts the hat on top of his head to cover up the candle. So I must stress, once again, this is definitely Jones just playing around with the idea of light. In fact, when he puts it on his head, you can even see part of it briefly shine on top of his nose as well. So it's definitely a lot of the technical merits of this short. In fact, if you slow-mo the bit where the hat goes on and the hat goes off his head while the candle's on his head, it's actually pretty interesting to see the different levels of light there. But Elmer even breaks the fourth wall to the audience, probably as an actor thinking, what am I doing in a short like this? Wouldn't I be better off being in a short where I'm hunting a certain rascally rabbit? But in any case. So Elmer finally figures out, wait a minute, I could just put the candle on a bedside table and take off my jacket. But we got an addition to the gag now where he just can't get the candle off his finger. Again, very riveting, isn't it? So while all this is quite slow and drawn out, at least, hey, I like the facial expressions done here. So whoever animated this, I know there's a credited animator of Phil Monroe there. I don't know if anyone else animated it. I don't think it would have been a solo show here. So if there's any other animator you can identify here, definitely let me know in the comments. But regardless of the actual story itself and how the gags are, you can't deny at least it's animated well. And I do like the effects where he's waving his hand around, he's trying to get the candle off his finger, and you can see the brief moments of the effects animation of that candle being smeared around. And in fact, Jones not long after this would embrace using smears in a lot of his shorts to emphasize speed. So the candle goes out and he lights it back up. Again, this is going to emphasize the point later on that he can't get the candle to go out when he actually wants it to. And then we see Elmer rubbing his face, which is pretty much my face right now, trying to keep this review as riveting as humanly possible. But we get some further effects animation, again showcasing smears, which, as I mentioned, is going to be a Chuck Jones trademark, especially in the 40s. And so we end that bit right there where Elmer finally is able to put the candle down, take off his clothes, and he's now into his pajamas. So that's the first part of the short, and we're pretty much past halfway, and it's only now that we're up to the part with Elmer actually going to bed. Some of the other shorts I mentioned before that to actually take on the same idea, they would actually start pretty much straight away with the character being in bed, whereas here, it's a little different. Got a lot of focus on Elmer actually getting ready for bed. And then we see the shenanigans of him actually trying to get to sleep, but the candle is, of course, not letting him. Then we get a scene, again, it's not particularly funny, but we see Elmer trying to blow out a candle, and the candle coming back on. Putting aside how unfunny a lot of it actually is, again, look at the technical merits of it. It looks absolutely incredible. Especially in the bit where you got Elmer, he decides, okay, I couldn't blow out the candle, so I'm going to lick my fingers and put out the candle that way. But then we see this, what looks to be transparent paint of some kind, showcasing the actual flame on his finger. It's a nice little effect. It's similar to the recent Chuck Jones short Ghost Wanted, where you had the ghost characters having that translucent paint, so it's a similar thing. But look at the animation of Elmer when he's realizing his finger's on fire and he's trying to shake it off. Look at the jowls on the side of his face. That one's a good one to slow-mo. So it's a little gem within this rather, I know, I mentioned it a million times already, this rather unfunny short. We get a few scenes of Elmer trying to blow out the candle. Again, top-notch animation of him trying to blow it out. And you just see the weight behind his breath as he's trying to blow out the candle to no avail. Maybe he should give up smoking. Maybe he was a smoker. I don't know. We can speculate, I guess. And we can see all the different levels of light flickering as he does all that. So he tries to put out the candle by putting his hands on top. I don't know why he doesn't just put the candle on the windowsill now. Anyway, so he thinks he's got the candle out, but the candle tries to wake up again, I guess. And Elmer looks over and the actual flame hides. So the flame now basically becomes a character in this short, so nothing wrong with that. I just wish it was more funnier. But again, nice play on light here. So the candle tries to go on, thinking Elmer's asleep, but Elmer sneaks up on this flame and gives him the dirty look. And again, the flame is now a character. And I love the expressiveness of this flame, and it's not easy to do to make such a thing look all expressive. In fact, Jones later on would revisit a similar idea here over at MGM when he made the dot and the line. So even earlier on, he was doing stuff like this. But say what you want about this short, you can't deny that pissed off Elmer is the funniest Elmer, right? So at least you got that going for you in this short as well. But we get the usual gag where it's Elmer looking over, the flame tries to hide, Elmer looks away, the flame comes back. So you know what to expect by now. But Elmer's had enough and he just puts a book on top to make sure that the flame ends up not coming back. Now I'll stop for a moment to point out that another element I do like in this short actually is the music, and just like the emphasis of certain gags in time with the music. There's only 2 musical cues, and one's actually a funny little pun, if you know the name of it, but it definitely adds to it, and I gotta say, despite being a dull short, at least the music's also interesting alongside, as I mentioned already, the technical aspects. So Elmer breaks the fourth wall again when he's thinking, did the flame really come back on again? I mean, the flame has burnt a hole through the book. So hopefully Elmer's finished reading that one. Elmer changes position, looks over to the mirror and sees that, yeah, the flame has gone through his book. But I like how we cut to another shot here that Elmer is all satisfied. He's now going to finally have his peaceful sleep. So you got to figure out, okay, what did he do to stop this flame as we went over? And again, nice little play on light there. He just stacks a whole bunch of books to stop the light seeping over. I mean, it's not a perfect outcome, but for Elmer, it's pretty clever. And again, we've got this repeat of the same gag as before, where the flame is trying to peek over. To what end? I don't know. But Elmer, again, like before, sneaks on over without the flame realizing it. But Elmer does now what he should have done a long time ago, snaps the candle in half, and seems rather satisfied in doing it. So there is that. But as you'd expect, he snaps it in half. We now got 2 candles to contend with. But there's this wonderful shot where he's looking all smug, breaking the fourth wall, and we got that wonderful light reflecting onto his pajamas there. Is it funny? No, but it's really nice looking, I have to say. But then Elmer gives one look at the audience where you can just see in his face he is ready to snap. And sure enough, he goes over to an axe that he has nearby. That would no doubt be used in case of an emergency, though one could argue that, yeah, this is a bit of an emergency. He needs his sleep after all. But we see that wonderful animation of Elmer walking all nonchalantly with the axe behind him, even though you can clearly see that there's an axe above his head. But anyway, so he's walking over, the flames end up hiding from him. And yeah, you got to wonder what on earth is he going to do? But this kind of also reminds me of Elmer's candid camera, where throughout the short, he's peaceful, he's calm, and that prototype Bugs Bunny ends up annoying him and he ends up snapping at the end.
Rabbit! Rabbit! Wildlife!
So this is basically a similar idea, except there's no funny rabbit. I mean, if nothing else, it's worth seeing this short at least for the ending scene, so for the last 45 seconds or so. Seeing him just smashing the crap out of his bedroom is oddly satisfying to see. And again, you got a lot of smear effects here, something again Jones will end up picking up on to build up speed in these shorts, but there's also one bit at the end that makes this short worthwhile as well. So Elmer in his destroyed bedroom, just love the fact that he's finally going to get to sleep, and even his blanket is all torn up with his feet poking through. It's kind of amusing. He's finally going to get to sleep, but if you've seen enough of these shorts, and even if you haven't, you know what the punchline's going to be. There's going to be another bit of light showing through, but is it the candle? No, it's the sun rising. So that means he was contending with that flame for 6 hours. Wow. Of course, it doesn't bring up the fact that Elmer could have just picked up that candle and just put it in another room and closed the door, but, you know, we don't overthink these things, right? And we see the funniest animation in this whole short, as I've already mentioned before, coming from another short, Elmer sobbing and crying, breaking the fourth wall doing so. And we end right there. Yeah, I can see why a lot of you wanted me to do this review so badly, right? I was certainly excited when I saw it on the list. I had seen it before. I'd done it as part of a commentary track, which I had to take down because of copyright issues and whatever. Revisiting this one, especially in this restoration, I do have a bit of an appreciation for it because this is part of Chuck's journey to become the Chuck Jones we all know and love. If you watch it with the technical aspects in mind, you can definitely find a lot to like about it, as I've hopefully pointed out to you. And yes, it is worth seeing that massive build-up just to see him go absolutely insane at the end, destroy his bedroom, and then cry like a baby. So it's definitely worth seeing for that reason. But up until that point, is it funny? No, not at all. It's incredibly slow, and it's got the worst of Jones around this period of time. But I can't find myself hating it because I'm entertained at the end of it, and I do enjoy seeing a lot of technical aspects. But I have to give it a low score of like 5 out of 10, which that 5 is, of course, all those positives I've just mentioned. And hey, you get to experience it for yourself on the Blu-ray disc on that Looney Tunes Collector's Vault. So make sure you watch this on as big a screen as possible and become the most popular person to whoever you're showing it to. But that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.